All right, everybody, welcome to our lesson for today. We're going to start this week with talking about women of revolutionary America. So our objectives and standards are to understand the role of women in the American Revolution and to analyze the impact women had on the American Revolution. And just take a moment there to read the standards if you would. And our desired result, how did women impact the American Revolution? Okay, a couple of vocab words here. We have the Townshend Acts. These were the British tax on tea, paper, paint, and other imports that angered American colonists. Lexington and Concord were the opening battles of the American Revolutionary War. The Daughters of Liberty were a revolutionary group of American women that spun cloth and discussed the issues of the day. Boycott is refusing to buy or use a certain object or material. A loyalist is someone who supported the British side during the American Revolution. Patriot, those who supported the American colonists during the American Revolution. Ladies Association is a group of groups of women that collected money for the Patriot cause in the American Revolution. So leading to revolution during the 1770s, prior to the colonies having issues with Great Britain, women were simply expected to marry and raise a family. Now, a majority of families lived on farms, and women helped where they could. But with the rise of revolution in the colonies, this would lead to many women supporting the fight in different ways. So rebellion begins when the British Parliament passed the Townshend Act, also known as the Revenue Act, on June 27, 1767. American colonists were really angry about this. It placed a tax on tea, paint, paper, and other British imports that the colonists were frequently used to using pretty much every day. So to protest this, the colonists decided to boycott or refuse to use British goods. Now, women also supported the boycott in this protest by making their own cloth instead of buying British materials. And soon these women began to form groups, and they called themselves the Daughters of Liberty. Now, women also in these groups, as they were sewing or making materials, could discuss issues of the day while they spun clothing. So this is one of the kind of first social organizations for women in the colonies as well. So war begins. In April 1775, war will break out between the British and the American colonists following the battles of Lexington and Concord. And during the next 8 years, we'll see war that will destroy both cities and countryside. And the war just didn't impact men. Women could help with the war by helping at soldiers' camps, such as washing, cooking, or producing goods. Sometimes women would follow their husbands or other family members to camps to help. Others worked as spies and delivered secret messages, and there were even some women that disguised themselves as men and served as soldiers as well. So a time for taking sides. So colonial women were required to take a side and choose a position to support. Some chose loyalist, which was supporting the British, or others chose patriot, or support the American colonist. Now, most women frequently chose to be a patriot, typically, but there were also women who chose to be loyalist. And it didn't mean that they weren't any committed to the cause. In fact, there were 3 loyalist women who plotted to kill the mayor of Albany, New York. Just like American women served as spies for the Americans, there were loyalist women who acted as spies for the British or provided supplies and hiding places to soldiers. Many loyalist women and their children were actually forced to leave the United States. Many went to Canada, but others fled to England. And some loyalist women were actually arrested and jailed for their actions. Now, many people will see their friendships fall apart or even marriages ended over choosing sides. Maybe a husband wanted to be a patriot, woman wanted to be the wife wanted to be a loyalist. So, we see families and friendships fall apart. However, whatever side a woman might choose, they had to survive the war and all the challenges with it. So challenges on the home front. The American Revolution lasted from the spring of 1775 until September 3rd, 1783. Women were left as the head of the household while men were away fighting. Feeding and caring for their families, as well as maybe caring for others fleeing from the battles, was a responsibility of women. Sometimes they had to give food, care, and shelter to soldiers. Armies on both sides took food and livestock and firewood from families, so this could add to struggles for women, obviously caring for children or other family members, and soldiers are taking your basic needs. And in addition to these challenges was the threat of disease, especially smallpox. Smallpox was a very deadly disease in the colonies at this time, and sometimes women had their children inoculated, meaning they got an early version of getting a vaccine with smallpox in the hopes that they would not get the deadly disease or become sick. So supporting the war effort. The war was going badly for the American colonists by 1780. Many American troops were struggling, and the city of Charleston, South Carolina actually had fallen to the British. Women felt they needed to help the war effort in whatever ways they could. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Esther de Burt Reed formed the Ladies Association of Philadelphia. The goal was to collect money for the soldiers and included very famous members such as Thomas Jefferson's wife, Martha Wayles Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin's daughter, Sarah Franklin Bach. Soon other lady associations will pop up in Trenton, New Jersey, and Baltimore, Maryland. And these organizations collected large sums of money for the soldiers and were some of the large-scale women's associations, some of the first large-scale women's associations in American history. So lifestyle, work, and war. During and shortly following the war, women were responsible for their homes, their businesses, the farms. And in addition to making their own clothing and other goods, women used salt to preserve or save food. They also had to work farms and care for the livestock and crops. Businesses, if a husband or a son or someone like that had owned a business, these had to be run by mothers or daughters or wives while their husbands were away. Because of this, because of all the effort that women did on the home front, maybe not so much fighting the war sometimes, but because of taking care of businesses and farms and the families and making materials or collecting things, due to their support and work during the war, men began to respect women more, and soon we'll see women will begin to be included in family decision making. Now, we've talked about typically white or Caucasian women, so we'll take a minute here to talk about some other lives of different groups of women that were affected. The lives of slave women. 47,000 slaves were living in northern cities, while there were 320 slaves in the South. Many African American women could be found in American camps as slaves. However, the British will actually offer slaves in the colonies new freedom if they help Great Britain. So many Southern slaves will escape plantations to accept this offer, but following the end of the Revolutionary War, many former slaves will move to Nova Scotia, Canada, New Brunswick, or the Caribbean with former loyalists. But despite the promise of freedom, many African Americans still face discriminations in their new locations. And the lives of Native American women. Women of Native American tribes did not typically see themselves or their families as loyalists or patriots, and both colonists and the British tried to gain support of Native Americans, and Native American tribes actually split on which to support during the American Revolutionary War, whether they supported the Patriots or the British. Now, many Native Americans are going to support the British because they felt that if the Americans won the war, it would mean more colonists in the West and the spread of colonists into those areas. Women of Native American tribes also feared a shift in political power in their tribes, that if the Americans won, that maybe some political ramifications would take place, that the men of their tribes would not allow them to have certain powers that they had. For example, many women in Native American tribes had the power to select and remove chiefs and to be present at the councils of war, especially in the Iroquois tribe. But following the war, women in Native American tribes, they will lose some political power to Native American men. All right, so our closure. How did women impact the American Revolution? Think about some of the ways they supported the fighting, whether it be on the battlefield or on the home front, and how it affected them overall and their families. That will help you answer your question at the end there. All right, so have a great rest of your day or week, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.